Hi, my name is Will. I make music under the name Baths. When I create a song, it starts from any number of things. That's the fun of it, sort of, is that it's always different. It's like the creative process is the most exciting thing ever, that like I can have a song start from lyrics that I have and build sort of an emotional atmosphere from that, or I have like a little melodic idea or an instrumental riff or something. It's always like a little tiny bit of something that I feel like there's a whole lot more that can build on top of it. So I find the idea of not knowing what you're hearing very romantic, like the idea of hearing music and sounds that's like you feel like you know what it is, like it's sort of familiar, but at the same time it's like hearing something completely different or new. That's very cool to me. So in recording, I try and, even if I'm using an instrument like a guitar, I try and skew the sound of it enough that it's sort of different. Or my vocals, I try and toy with the way I record them with each song. They're sort of different sound. This album, even though it's very intentionally like beat driven and electronic and has a lot of very like sort of synthetic sounds, even though they're from real instruments most of the time, it's like I want to marry that songwriting sort of lens, intuition, whatever it is that I had from before, with a very accessible sort of electronic sound, like a very pop music, beaty sort of. My method in the past with other projects of mine is always sort of a lot of pre-planning, and a lot of ideas will happen, and then I have to like, I work towards building the idea that I have in my head, and it's very premeditated. And with Baths, I went into it intentionally saying to myself, like, I need to just sit down and start recording. Like, I need to feel like I need to make a song and then just do it and not think about it, and have it be the most like natural flow of events and ideas and whatever. So having the title just sort of like very early on, I thought was a really good way of just sort of keeping, even though it's like very random the way the songs came together, sort of having an overlaying scope of where I wanted the album to go. And then like the second I came out and I realized that I could write songs about what I actually love and like what I actually care about, everything started to make so much more sense, and it became more fun to write music because it felt so much more real and so much more easy. And that was sort of like the most magnificent change in my songwriting process, was it just felt like I was actually making music towards what I cared about.
We are the Young Veins. I'm Ryan.
And I'm John. I think we wanted the Young Veins to sound like us. I think the songs we were writing, we just kind of didn't think about that too much, and it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, I think that's what just allowed us to do the album as fast as we did, writing the songs we did, because we didn't really think too much about what we wanted to sound. I mean, once you get in the studio, you know, you have to make it sound like something sonically, but as far as the songwriting went, we just wanted to write songs that we liked. It wasn't like we ever sat down to write an album. We just had a bunch of songs, which kind of made it a little bit easier. You know, we wrote a couple right before we went in the studio, just, you know, because we needed them, but for the most part, it was just something we were doing on tour anyway.
I think it was just a combination of a lot of things, and the fact that the band didn't really feel like things weren't happening organically, and that was pretty much on all ends of the band, and we weren't getting along as far as, you know, making music and creating goes. So I think that was just a sure sign for us that, you know, something needed to be changed.
Yeah, I think we wanted different things. We had, you know, the music's one thing, but just for the whole idea of what it is to be in that band or any band, we just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we've had great support though. I mean, as far as the shows we've been playing the last few months, there's been a lot of people, you know, coming up to us, whether they've heard of the band prior to, you know, us releasing an album or not. It's been kind of all over the place, which has been refreshing because, you know, it's you don't really expect that as a new band to already have fans. It's a lot different for us being an opening band after, you know, the touring we've done the past 3 or 4 years. So I think for us, we're just trying to play as good as possible and impress people. So
we're not really jumping around much. We're trying to play our songs right. You know, we eat so much junk food. We eat Waffle House 3 or 4 times a day, and it's starting to catch up with all of us.
Luckily, we're out of the South.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish we had some good rituals, but unfortunately, they're mostly unhealthy.
My name is Niklas Frisk and I'm the guitarist in A Camp.
And my name is Nina Persson and I'm the singer in A Camp.
My name is Nathan Larson and I'm the bass player in A Camp.
So, we are A Camp.
We're living in Niklas'
We always
world.
say that Niklas is the first wheel and me and Nathan are the second and third wheel.
Yeah, we're just like hangers on. Right. He's got the whole game and we're just kind of like...
I'm the one-wheeler.
Right.
We all have our history in bands. That's a wonderful format to do music in because you share the glory and you share the hard work too. So we have sort of cooked up a world that is ours.
I mean, the record is one thing, but also the whole live thing. Another dimension. You can sort of touch them and smell them.
I mean, we liked the first record a lot, but we wanted to do a serious departure from that.
Although we did make a conscious effort, I think, to subtract some of the Americana style strumming acoustic guitar stuff. But it was a pretty democratic process writing this stuff. We all contributed in our
Yeah, in that we all do a little bit of everything, but we kind of each have our superpowers. We overlap a lot.
Sort of like when you incorporate, you legally create another person to shelter yourself from litigation.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
So that's what we've done.
Seriously, the way the social system is in Sweden, it's easy for people to not all the time work for your bread. You can actually spend periods of time doing your art and be supported. And I really do think that matters because people can actually develop quite properly without having a day job or.
Given the population, it's pretty unbelievable what level of quality and just the amount of stuff that comes out of it, such a small sort of country.
The inherited melancholy
Yeah.
might be the need for making music.
Hi, I'm Pureka. The first tape I ever got was a Beatles Greatest Hits tape, and it was pretty awesome. I was pretty into that. And then, you know, when I was older, I found some Simon and Garfunkel and Cat Stevens and stuff, and got really into that. That was sort of like my childhood musical experience. I started playing guitar when I was 16, and was really, really shy, like painfully shy. And the whole time I was writing songs, but I wasn't really playing them for people. And in college, I just sort of met other people that kind of play guitar, and we would hang out and play music. And eventually, I would play like open mics and stuff. And I just started working on being a performer. I usually just write from a really personal place, and that's what I've always done. So I mean, this record wasn't different than that. There's obviously a lot of light and dark imagery on the record, and the name of the record is How I Learned to See in the Dark. There are a few political songs on this record, which is a first for me. Sometimes I feel like Rachel Maddow inspires my songwriting. I don't think my sexuality specifically influences my songwriting. I think that it influences my experience. I think that people like to draw comparisons a lot, and you know, I don't think I sound like the Indigo Girls, although I really like their music. People are really quick to say you sound like Melissa Ferrick or you sound like Melissa Etheridge, and the flip side of the coin is that there's a really great community that I can tap into and that does appreciate me. So I mean, everything kind of happens from the ground up, and those fans are really important. They're the people that keep me doing what I'm doing. So.
Hello, my name is Adam Levine, and I am the singer of Maroon 5. Maroon 5's sound has always been changing because I think that we're not necessarily interested in fitting into a category. First of all, we're a band, which was really weird that we played R&B infused music in the beginning. This record, I had nothing on my mind that was specifically that. I didn't want to be anybody other than myself making this record. I think that this album is definitely free of any sort of hyper emulation. You know, there's no, and also I was in Switzerland, so geographically I was really isolated from everything. So I was kind of just letting it all go and seeing what happened. I love the fact that Mutt Lange is one of those guys who definitely, he's done everything. I mean, he produced AC/DC records, Def Leppard records, Shania Twain records. He doesn't really care about what something is or where it comes from. He cares much more about the quality of the music he's making. And that's how we feel too. You know, we've never been genre snobs or anything like that. And he's really good at helping us, he was really good at helping us figure out who we actually were. I feel older, for sure. It's kind of weird. I mean, the band released our first record when we were all 22 years old, right? That's young, you know, and then we started succeeding when we were 23, 24, and I'm 31 now. And it's like, wow. A, it's crazy we've been around this long. And B, I start to feel not insecure, self-conscious, but definitely start to feel slightly more disconnected from that youth-based kind of pop culture. I have ownership of who I am and what I do, so what everyone thinks doesn't matter to me. And that's a cool way to look at making music, too. I once said, I think, in an article, I was like, if we were like overweight, middle-aged dudes, we'd probably be taken really seriously and our music would be considered ironic and cool, and we'd be hipsters. Same music, different look, This is also under the assumption that I find myself attractive, which is funny. But the fact that I've been considered that is very flattering, but also maybe somewhat detrimental to what I'm trying to do, but also really helpful, So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, it's great. It propelled me to a place that I enjoy mostly. We're not trying to push the envelope, but we're definitely interested in quality and making good records and continuing to do that as time goes on and let people say what they say. It's kind of doesn't really matter.
Hi there, I'm Tori Amos. Well, I think there's something to be said for memory and moving forward at the same time, the paradox of that. You should never want to go back and relive something exactly as it was. But I think Pele, that was a time when if I didn't make that record and take that, walk that road, then I don't think I'd be sitting in front of you as a person. I don't know what would have happened. The Wrong Band is something that made the album in the final hour. And it knocked a song called Honey off the record, which was very important to my story. I chose to ask somebody's opinion that was, on the record side, on the professional side. And I regret doing that because I was feeling tired that day and maybe emotional. And you shouldn't be making decisions like that unless you're in a really neutral place. And so I took it off, truly, in the final hour. And I've regretted it ever since. So when people ask me to play it, I'm mad at myself. The songs are really complicated and complex. And I learned things from the songs almost every time I play them live. It's in the live setting where you're working off of the skill memory, and at the same time, you're creating a new memory in that moment, which will change forever the way that you approach that song. There are so many layers to each song that only I discover by playing it, because the songs taught me a long time ago that they have relationships with people that are frankly none of my business. But my impression of the song isn't the only, that doesn't just define what it is. Crucify means something else to me, but sometimes it's, why do we crucify ourselves every day again and a fucking again and in a new way? I do listen to contemporary music, but I'm going to tell you a little quick story. Years ago, there was a particular artist who was asked this question, and everybody's name was mentioned as artists who would do something with their lives, and I wasn't mentioned. And I had to re-examine myself for a couple days and realize that, okay, they might not believe in me or even know that I existed. And I decided, if I were ever in a position that to single certain people out and not others, whether I might not be aware of them or not, I do think that the process of creativity can be very personal. And so I keep that to myself. Well, every flavor, I guess. I mean, I love it. So in my mind, maybe that flavor at the time was self-destruction, although his flavor, of course, became destruction and not just self-destruction. And I've changed my flavor to construction, so hooray.
My name is Tegan.
My name is Sara.
We are Tegan and Sara.
The short answer for what sainthood is it's this idea of being good and practicing being good, and like ultimately it's all sort of in that family of being a devoted partner or devoted to what you believe in, and you know, in our case it's a lot of love. With sainthood, because we were working with Chris Walla again, his big suggestion to us was to take the material that we had demoed at home and to work it out as a band in the studio, and to have that sort of dictate tempos and keys and arrangements. And then sort of see what would happen if you played the song 50 times, where would it evolve, how would it go. In each record, I think we've definitely allowed ourselves to, you know, spread out a little bit, you know, wear more than one kind of hat, you know. It's almost like we're two bands. The first couple records is one band, and then these last few records is the new Tegan and Sara, and I think it's because we really did learn how to use our voices and use our talent and use our abilities to make something that really does sum up who we are. And in terms of writing, yeah, the moment when I am just like so anxious that I just have to export it and send it to Sara, that's when I know that I'm done. I don't think Sara always thinks I'm done, but
yeah, my writing process is different. I record until my Pro Tools says that there's no tracks left. Yeah, that's usually like, I'm like, well, I guess I'm done.
I think the last 10 years we've really established where the line between private Tegan and Sara and public Tegan and Sara is. I think that when it comes to what we believe in, there is no line. When we came out 10 years ago, I mean, more than 10 years ago now, that was right when we were also starting our music career. And there was definitely that moment, you know, right at the beginning when nobody cared. And there was that moment where we were like, do we leave this off the resume? Now, looking back on it, I'm really glad we made that decision because, you know, you look at the music charts, you look at music magazines, you look at the world in general, and like, you know, there's definitely more and more women and more queer culture in the mainstream, but it's still far and few between. And I'm glad to be a part of a generation that's really proud of their sexuality and feels equal with everybody, but we still have a long way to go.
We're queer, but music doesn't have a sexuality. Like, even if our music was written more clearly to women, like if we were using she and her and that sort of thing, I still think that the music is still just music. It's still just a song, and just like literature, if the themes of the book are queer, like, you know, does that mean it's only for a queer audience? Like, I'm just not sure that that's as important anymore. And yet, it's important to, you know, I think to be out, especially for the people who still can't be out or don't want to be out. I definitely want to be seen by those kids, and I want to be a role model to those kids, you know.
Hello, my name is Andrew WK. I had enough exposure to music to understand that I liked it, but had no idea I would end up liking it as much as I did. Actually, now I can say I've never thought about it this way before, but it was like the first orgasmic experience I ever had was watching these piano teachers play songs for us, or advanced pianists, seeing them work. And now I felt that way many times since, which seems to actually be the whole point of life, is to seek out moments to feel that way as often as possible. And music has always been a surefire way for me to get that rush. Oh, the new album, yes, I have one right here, and it's 2 CDs, as you can see, and we got 39 songs on here between both those discs. This album is an old album, but it's never been released in the US or the rest of the world, only in Asia, so it's great to finally make it available, and I figured why not throw in some bonus tracks on the second disc. So it's a real package here, and it's called Close Calls with Brick Walls and Mother Mankind. It's great to be touring again. I'll be going on the entire Warped Tour this summer, 2010. That's our first headlining nationwide tour in six years, really. We want to bring everybody in and then blow them out with celebration. well, not necessarily that, but you know, just like open them up. Santos Party House is a concert hall and nightclub, 2 floors, 8,000 square feet, downtown Manhattan, New York City, on Lafayette, right below Canal. About, wow, at this point, almost 6 years ago, 3 friends of mine approached me and said, we want to start our own club. Anytime you have an opportunity to open a business in New York City, it's very intense, but a nightclub is especially intense. It was an odyssey. It was the most adverse challenge that I had ever experienced. So it's just an incredible feeling to give back to New York and to provide a place for bands to play, for people to go and dance, just like I was able to enjoy when I first came here. I grew up a fan of all different kinds of music, but especially very heavy music, very loud and aggressive music. But when I decided to do Andrew WK, I kind of figured that there'd be certain things that I liked that wouldn't like me back. Even things that I came from, like heavy metal, where I wouldn't necessarily be accepted by the heavy metal scene. And as I continued on, I was always surprised to be accepted by scenes I didn't expect. And somehow I think eventually the sense of goodwill gets out even more than the sound of the music or the style or how I even look. I think there's an obvious sense of goodwill and joy in what we're doing, and I think eventually that gets through people and they can see past the style or the genre and things like that. With the gay community, I would like to think it's the same thing. I think maybe people were intimidated by me, or I noticed a lot of times people thought I didn't like gays. I've never said anything like that, but I think maybe the way I looked or the way I carried myself, it didn't seem like it would be gentle or something, but I love gays and as much as anybody else, especially living in New York. I mean, that was a big part of my inspiration to move here, was here's a place where everybody is allowed to be. Well, not even allowed to be, allowed to thrive. Like, this is a place where everybody can come. And anything that goes against the traditions of culture that excludes people, or culture that says who's right and who's wrong, or who's better and who's worse, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I want to be part of the culture that blows everybody's mind. And I've noticed that gay sexuality in general has a real ability to blow people away. And that's like what I want. I want my mind to be blown, and I want everyone else's mind to be blown, and gays are good at blowing minds. And other things, I'm sure. Well, I first became a fan of Kathy Griffin seeing her on Seinfeld, where she played this character who was designed to be the most annoying person of all time, which was just such an amazing idea for a character, and then to have this woman pull it off so artfully and really nail the vibe. So that's when I first saw her, and then I saw she was getting her own show, and it was doing well. By the time they invited me to be on the show, it was kind of at one of its peak. I think it was sort of the last episode of one of the seasons or something that we did, and I was aware that she went on dates with people, and they asked me to go on one of these dates, and I, without meaning to insult her, I didn't take it so seriously in terms of that it was actually a real date. They found out that I was already engaged, or maybe I was even married at that point, and they said, what are you doing? You can't go on a date with Kat. I said, I didn't really think it was a serious date, but they said it is. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to my wife, and we're gonna break up for this one day, and then we'll get back together. And my wife was fine with it, and Kathy seemed okay with that too. I also wasn't aware that she was this gay icon at that time. It wasn't until I went on the date when every 10 seconds some guy would come up and be like, Kathy, I'm just so psyched to meet you. But it was amazing. She was very nice. She's very nice, and I wasn't sure how she was going to be, if she was going to be nice to me especially, but very nice, very professional, just pop on. She looked good too. When it comes to partying, I think the most important thing is to do what appeals to you, and to let everybody else do the same. I always was bummed out when someone said, you have to drink more of this, or you shouldn't be drinking, or you have to be dancing now. Why are you standing on the wall? That just was distracting. If everybody could just do what they enjoyed at that moment and let everybody else follow their own will, then I think there would be just celebration, not only at a party, but around the world. That could be the state of the world, I think, is to do what most appeals to you without any compromise, and then as long as it doesn't interfere with someone else being able to party.